Okay, hey guys. Today I am joined with Joe Banfi, and me and Joe have been emailing back and forth about what he does and stuff. And I've been fascinated by. He sent me a link to his music. I shared it in my newsletter because I thought his music was absolutely gorgeous and awesome. And I thought it'd be really interesting if me and Joe had a chat, recorded it, and we could talk about how Joe is making a living, making money, becoming a professional by selling his own songs and his own artistry, because this is fascinating for not just me, for you as well, and for millions of aspiring composers and producers. So, Joe, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, as Rich said, I'm Joe Banfi. I release music for two different projects at the moment. One is just my surname, Banfi, and the other is a kind of alternative indie project. Sounds like a band thing, but confusingly, it's now a solo project. But I do everything, drums and bass and all that kind of thing, and keys and guitar. And then there's another project called Prayers, spelled Praers, which is more ambient, sort of like a combination between songwriter stuff and ambient stuff, which I do as a duo with a composer called Thomas James White. And yeah, do you want me to, should I go into like my history, or is it just a short introduction?
Oh, this is great. Okay, so first of all, two like pseudonyms or two monikers that you're writing under. Not really a pseudonym, Banfi, is it? But
Yeah,
artist names. Yeah. So let's just tell everyone where you're at now, and then we'll step back because this is the exciting stuff for me.
sure. So right now, Prayers is, I would say, my probably my priority, just because we recently started working with Extreme, and getting into like that kind of production music world of things. Um, we'd released this EP with Extreme, and we won Best Ambient Minimal at the awards, which was really cool. So now we've just finished this second EP for Extreme, which will be 6 songs, and that'll be coming out like very soon. And then the Banfi stuff is it's been such an up and down thing with it. I've had times where it's just been me, times where it's just been a publisher, times where it's been publisher, record label, booking agent, and everything, and touring and all of that. And now it's come back to a point where it's me self-releasing again. I did an album with I was on one label and then moved to a smaller label. I did an album with them that didn't get received. I was so proud of it. It was like I thought it was the best thing I'd ever done, but it didn't get received as I hoped into the world. And then I've done a single since then that did get, got more attention from Spotify and got on the big sort of indie playlists and things like that. So yeah, Banfi's a more interesting, tricky thing with the ups and downs. And recently with Banfi as well, studio got in touch and asked if I would do a kind of Banfi tutorial thing where I show from start to finish how I make a Banfi song. And I would love to do that with Prayers as well, but yeah, that was just for Banfi at the moment. Yeah, but so two monikers, and I know you've had different monikers for different things, Rich. So I'm sure you can relate to the confusion it causes sometimes. Or is this a Banfi song or a Prayers song or another project, and all that kind of stuff?
Yes. Yeah, I can totally relate, especially since a lot of my side projects were Richard something. So Richard Prynne, Richard Edwards, Richard Schreiber. I just made this. It was a very silly thing for me to do. Like, I could have just given myself some distinctive names like Banfi and Prayers. Great. Two different ones. Keep it
Well,
simple.
the Banfi thing was I kind of, that was sort of a mistake. Because it's a band, but I've used my name because the way that started out is I started doing like acoustic folk singer songwriter stuff. I did a song called Olive Green that then got picked up by a label called Communion, and this was back in like 2011, 2012. And Communion were, or still are, quite a big label. They were it was Ben from Mumford and Sons and Kev Jones from Communion who co-founded the. Kev Jones heard my stuff, and then I released, yeah, solo acoustic stuff as Joe Banfi, But then that kind of morphed into this band sound. So I dropped the first name, and because I couldn't think of another band name at the time. And Kev was just like, oh, you'll think of one. And then the first gig came and I hadn't thought of a name. So I just went with Banfi. And then, yeah, it would have been easier if it had been like the something or other, like the obvious band name, or I don't know.
Yeah, but think how many arguments and endlessly pointless discussions you've had about band names that you've avoided now just by being forced into your first name, your second name. Banfi, great. It's not. When I used to be in a band, mate, it took us years to decide the name. Guys,
what was the name?
I'm not even going to tell you. It's a terrible name. It was actually, but I don't know why, we named it after the cholera outbreak of 1848.
Oh, yeah. Well, the band was called the Cholera Outbreak of 1848.
It was called Outbreak 1848. It was, yeah.
That's a much better band name than some band names of groups I've been part of in the past.
You've got to at least share one now. You've got to make me feel better about this.
One was, I was very young, and I hope the other guys who, if any of them are watching this, I hope they're equally as not into the name. Hopefully they're not. What? I thought it was a great name.
Yeah.
But when the singer wanted to call the band The Sex, and I was like, look, we can't just be called The Sex. It's not going to work. And so then we chose another random word and went with radio. So it was called Sex Radio.
I mean, yeah, that definitely paints a picture.
Yeah, I'm not sure it even paints the right picture. It was.
No, yeah. Was there a saxophonist anywhere? Just that's good. It's the definitive sex or sex radio. That's a niche market like that. So this is all great, and I love the fact that you've got two artists essentially treading different paths. And this is the thing with creating your own brand and creating your own artistry and flying the flag of yourself under a certain name. Because when I first started out decades ago, it was like, let's see if I can get a major label deal. And that was all I could ever think to do. But now it's, as you said, you're approaching a well-known production music library, Extreme, getting representation from them or getting a label deal and self-publishing. This is all really exciting stuff. It is also a little bit scary because there's so many options. It's like stepping into a massive sweet shop and going, I don't know what to choose.
Yeah.
Then you see someone going, I'm going for the foam bananas and it's going to be amazing. And then you feel jealous that they've got the foam bananas and you should have gone in for the foam. I'm taking the metaphor too far. Let's go back a little bit. Okay. What was it that made you want to get into this line of work?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot because of the days where I think, why am I doing this? Or what? I don't know. I think I don't know if anyone else has that. But for me, I reckon once a month, I'm thinking, Jesus, this is tough. I hope this was the right choice. Yeah. And it goes back to when I was a kid, I used to play with action figures a lot. And it was always this thing of, I hated people. I didn't hate people, but I didn't like friends who didn't know how to play with them in a realistic way where you would have cool stories and make them fight in a good way. So there was like this one guy came around and he just had my two action men and was just like slamming them together. And for him, that was a fight. And I was like, no, an action man fight is he climbs up the table and then Dr. X kicks him off and there's a storyline. He's like seeking revenge or like rescuing someone. And it was always, so I would look back at that and I was thinking, how has that led to, how has that led to everything I've done since? Because I was just trying to find this common thread through my life. And I think it was the kind of two things of control, like creative control of me just being able to do whatever I wanted with these things. And then also these kind of emotional climaxes, like these moments where one would get revenge on the other or one would save someone. And it was those two things really that I think could have led to any kind of creative pursuit. Maybe if I'd been more visual, maybe it would have been filmmaking, or if I'd read a lot more, maybe it would have been being a novelist, or trying to be. Obviously all these careers are very competitive, but yeah, I guess I've always been attracted to those sorts of careers. And in particular, for some reason, music took hold as harnessing those two aspects of, yeah, like creative control meets kind of emotive climaxes, if that makes much sense. And it might sound it might sound a bit random, me saying like, why did I think to go back to my childhood? But I just thought, or maybe I even read it somewhere. Someone was like, you need to try and remember, what did you love doing before you tried to do things well to make money or to impress people? What did you enjoy doing when you were from the age, say, 5 to 12? And it's difficult to remember, but just gradually, and through talking to my mum about it and stuff, and my brother, I remembered, oh yeah, it was this obsession with action figures. And I was absolutely gutted going into high school when I was 11, like being too old to play with figures without getting rinsed by all my cool friends. So I guess that's when the figures thing died out, and maybe it moved into video games. But then there was, video games are cool, but it's still all somebody else's creation. And then it was when I found music where I was like, oh my God, there's that thing, the emotive climax, and I can control the whole thing, especially with guitar, where I was like, there we go.
Dude, okay, first question. What action figures? Was it all Action Man?
It was, do you remember Military Muscle Men as well?
Yeah, yes, I remember Military Muscle Men.
Yeah. So there was Military Muscle Men. We even would, me and my brother and my cousin, we would tie thread onto the Military Muscle Men, and then you could have them abseil down the stairs and things like that. You know, it got really good. Fisher Price as well. Do you remember?
Dude, I've got to pause you. Just wait there. Just wait. So I was really hoping, I had a Military Muscle Man on my floor for the past like 2 weeks, just here by my desk.
What? And it's gone now.
The thing is, my kids were playing with it because they've got all my old G.I. Joes and Military Muscle Man, and like,
yeah.
That would have been a beautiful moment had I. Yeah,
I would have loved to. Yeah, I haven't seen one for ages. I would love to have seen that.
Yeah, I'll send you a picture. Sorry, go on. Yeah, but you were saying Fisher Price.
Yeah, Fisher Price used to do these things where the first one I got was like a little castle, and it was these knights that you could have them fight in the castle. But the best one was this cowboy one. It was like this little cowboy town. And there was like a trap door at the top where the men could fall through and then smash out of these little doors that were supposed to be a window, and there was a jail and everything. And I could just play with this stuff for a long time. I really loved it.
Yeah, me too, man. The reason I ask is because I was obsessed with G.I. Joes.
Nice.
To the point where I would sing their theme tunes into my mum's dictaphone. So I still actually have a recording of Duke's theme tune that I sang when I was about 9. Nice.
Oh, so your kind of connection to music through figures happened very naturally then.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I still do that on my phone these days, you know.
Nice. Yeah.
The funny thing is, I've never connected that. Like the moment you said, "Oh, action figures," I was like, "Oh my goodness, I am one and the same."
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it for really. I hadn't thought what because I did try filmmaking for a little bit as well, because I think it was the same thing, you know, like me being very creatively controlling and just wanting to direct something. And I made some terrible films. I made two that I wouldn't mind talking about. It doesn't need to be the focus or anything, but if people wanted to look it up, there's one on YouTube called A Young Old Man, which is like a documentary I made about this old guy he was like 88, and he used to go out in Newquay and Cornwall and play guitar in the nightclubs and stuff. And I just got chatting to him and ended up like making this little 10-minute documentary about him. And then there was another little 1-minute film I made for a competition called Bin Day, where I essentially watched the Graham Norton show, and this woman, you know, those stories people tell Graham Norton where he then pulls this lever if it's a bad story. Yeah. And this one woman told a story about rushing out to put the bins out. Well, if I tell the story, then it'll spoil the 1-minute film, which is called Bin Day.
So I'll put a link to it. The Young Old Man and Bin Day. Sorry, is that by Joe Banfi?
Yeah,
Or is that
yeah, yeah. If you put in Joe Banfi, Young Old Man, and Binde, but for some reason, I think maybe it was because around that time, that was when I was at uni in Sheffield when I was, yeah, and I'd been in bands before uni, but then when I went to Sheffield, I was like, no, I don't want to do music anymore. And I started trying films and stuff, but then in the open mic nights in Sheffield, just as a release, I think, and one thing led to another, and I ended up with some demos, and then I thought, oh, I'm just going to send these out, and I emailed them out to people, and yeah, Kev Jones from Communion, for some reason, was very lucky. He just got back to me, and so then I thought, that's a big invitation there. I'm going to maybe give filmmaking a little rest, but not. I hope that's not to make it sound like, oh, I just played a few open mic nights and then I could suddenly write these folk songs that Communion wanted to hear. It was it was ever since I was 12, really. That was when I started trying to make my own songs, usually as part of a band where I wasn't the singer. I was playing guitar and just writing the songs on guitar.
the thing is, it is quite hard to convey in a brief synopsis all of the nights spent playing a guitar, writing songs, scribbling lyrics. I think we can safely assume there is tens of thousands of hours of work going in there.
Yes. And
When you're
also
not playing.
I also want to say there the tens of thousands of hours of not doing the work and beating myself up about it and playing too many video games. And as a teenager, when I'd get home from school, finish my homework, and I think I really should practice guitar because Andy's getting better than me. He was like the other guitar player in the band. And then I wouldn't. And, I'd say, yeah, a lot of life has been not only the hours of practice and, as you say, all those things, but all the time where I've not been doing it and feeling bad about it.
Yeah, that is a whole thing altogether. The endless swathes of guilt associated with not working enough, working too much, not writing the best stuff. It's just leave me alone.
I know. I've still not figured that stuff out. I mean, that you've been a big help with that. When I first started listening to your podcast this year, it was awesome to see someone who's successful in their field saying, "Stop killing yourself." Because I'm so used to, especially in my early 20s, I'd be looking at these film composers, and because I've always had this attraction to, because of my attraction to emotion and, like I said, emotive climaxes with figures. I've always loved film music, and so then I'd look into the people who make film music, and they'd say, "Yeah, I do 20 hours a day, and I don't sleep." I tried that for a while. I tried the whole kind of Winston Churchill style. I like sleep 4 hours, then work, and then maybe have a nap in the afternoon. Tried that for 6 months, and yeah, did not work for me.
If you're going to talk about Winston Churchill, notoriously fighting off what he called the black dog his entire life, which was his label for depression. So
yeah.
The thing is, he's a pretty amazing figure, but also because he was an amazing painter as well, and like he did brickwork. But yes, the whole like overwork thing is really like overly romanticized, I think.
Yeah. It's quite toxic, isn't it? And yeah, there's just two sides, not to cliche, but it's two sides to every coin. Like, you want to work hard, but you don't want to. Because I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, when you're a songwriter, or I think the designer was the analogy they used. They said, if you're a painter and you try and be too productive, then you go from being a painter to a designer. Or if you're a sculptor and you be too productive, you go from being a sculptor to more into like architecture. That there's a subtle line there with creativity. You got to be careful that you don't scare it away with being too, like, come down like a hatchet. I'm gonna, today I'm gonna write this song, and that's it, and nothing's gonna stand in my way. It might be difficult to think the way I'm gonna write this great song this week is by watching that film or going to the cinema and seeing that thing. going in the sea that day and having that moment. And then once the stuff's in your heart, then the actual writing of it then doesn't take very long. It's not like other jobs where the actual writing of it, where you do have to sit at the desk for 10 hours, it's a lot more mysterious than that. But I've always had this problem of trying to not feel guilty, and so then trying to be productive and coming at things rigidly. And I'm from a whole long line of lawyers, like my brother and my dad and granddad, and before him, everyone's all lawyers. So it's this mindset of
billable hours, you mean?
Sorry?
Billable hours.
Yes, exactly. Billable hours. Yeah, that sums it up nicely.
Yeah. Similarly, not lawyers, but there's lots of doctors, specifically military doctors in my family.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So going the whole composer route where your output is asynchronous to the amount of time you've put in.
Yeah.
As in, you can't correlate 1 hour to one great song. You can't even correlate 100 hours to one great song. Like you say, it's all these other invisible things that feed in always.
Yeah.
That allow us to keep that energy flowing so that when we do sit down for however long it is, ideally 2 to 4 hours, boom, it's done.
Yeah. That correlation thing I think is so key, because in my early 20s, I think sometimes I would be trying to force that correlation, and I would be working on a song, just one song, say, for 2 months, and not working on any other song, because I'm just thinking, no, I'm going to put the hours in on this one until it's good. And it would just send the song itself and me insane. There are times where I almost quit music just because I'd made that mistake of, say, that correlation of thinking, no, the hours I put into this song, it will fix this song. And maybe I learned a lot from that, and maybe some of the things that didn't work with that song then I'm sure will have diverted and found ways into other songs. But having the wrong mindset with creativity can be quite dangerous. You got to make sure you understand, like you say, that there is no correlation, and if a song's not working, there's just general things, isn't there, that you can be doing to avoid these things, like just having general rules, like because ever since then I've always made sure I never just work on one song at a time. I always have at least 2 going, usually even 3 or 4. And
it's a good idea, that, because the other thing, when you say about like a song or a piece of music not working, how do you know it's not working? Because you might be tired, or you might be angry, or you might have just spent too long listening, so you can't hear the notes for the chords or whatever the appropriate, saying would be. So as you say, having more than one song on the go at a time allows you to have space to kind of track back into another song with fresh ears, fresh eyes, fresh mind, and go, oh, actually, this is great.
Yeah.
I've had that countless times where I've written a piece of music in, say, 2 to 4 hours, and at the end of the session, I've been like, this is rubbish. Why am I even a composer? I should just stop. This is terrible. I go, no, I'm going to go and have lunch, and then I'm going to go for a walk. And then I come back to it the next day and go, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
Which is just so funny, isn't it?
And don't you find as well that even if you've got 3 on the go, then if you come back after lunch in the walk and you're like, yeah, it is terrible, you're not going to, it doesn't matter, because you'll be like, you probably didn't even load it up anyway. You probably, on the walk, you probably were thinking of that other song that you were working on, or that other cue, or whatever field somebody's in. If you have more on the go, you give your subconscious some space to just work on its own. It doesn't want your conscious mind shining light on it all the time. It needs you to leave it alone. And so if you have more than one on the go, then you'll either get back from the walk and it will be some other song that you open, or even if you open that one and you still think, no, I don't like it, you're not going to get upset, because there's 2 others that you're excited about that you've got on the go. So that's been a big one for me.
Yeah, it's huge, isn't it? And those of you listening or watching, like, this is a fantastic piece of advice from Joe to have several songs going all at once. Because also the lovely thing is they leapfrog each other closer to the finish line. One of them might take a bit longer. One of them might suddenly just get done in one morning session, but it gives you that space, and it's just a really nice way to get through an album. I would often have 3 to 8 very different sounding tracks going on at the same time. This is why my side projects are often very different from each other, because it's almost like I go, okay, my trailing music mind has had enough today. Now I want to go into ambient. And now I want to go into synthwave, you know? It's like, just so I then go, oh, you've got this nice room to appreciate these nuances of the different genres. And like you said, it just gets you over the line. It's great.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to get into, so if someone is listening and watching and wants to start releasing their own stuff and getting traction with that, because as we all know, you can release a track and be like, this is going to be the one. I've spent years on this track. It's going to do the business, you know. Release date comes and goes. You watch those analytics every day. No plays, no listens, no downloads. Bum. So, what in your experience is something that we can do to help that? To help get people to listen to the tracks, land playlists, or even people to buy the stuff, you know?
Yeah. I think the first bit of that is the unhelpful answer, which is to have spent lots of time getting really good. But where that comes in practically is, say, for example, I'm gonna say a few things probably that don't seem connected, but then hopefully as I talk they'll sort of connect. The other thing you want to make sure with music is you never want to seem, say, everyone kind of feels, I'll go with the analogy of trains going along tracks. Everyone, like a record label, say somebody at a label or someone who has a big playlist on Spotify that you can submit to, not a Spotify curated one, but say what they called Alex Rainbow music. They've got their train going, they're flying along. The last thing they want is people on like train platforms going, oh, excuse me, can you listen to this? They want to, whereas if they're flying along and then they see in the distance another train flying along and they think, that looks exciting, what's happening over there? You then, like that, I think that's the kind of the best way to make things happen. Is it's difficult to say because it's different for everybody, but you want to have that fundamental thing of doing your thing well, and then as opportunities come up, you grab them, but you're not doing it in a kind of, like, one example, I won't name names, but when I did sign with Communion, Kev Jones, the A&R guy, he said one problem he has is there's loads of kids in London who go to all these nights and they give out their music and they try and talk to the right people so that they can try and get support slots or get in with certain publishers. And he just said if they just spent more time at home just working on the craft and less time trying to network their way up, then they would probably be in a better position. And that's obviously, there's easier said than done. Like, you can't just work on getting great songs without looking at the business side or networking, but it's a fine balancing act. And there's, I guess, one recent example that helps sort of explain what I'm talking about. You know, earlier I said, oh, I don't know how Studio heard about me when they asked me to do the thing.
Yep.
I don't know why I said that, because I guess I was just nervous at the start of the call, but that's not true. I don't know if we can take that out.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, because so one example is I just wanted to get better at writing songs, and for me, that never stops. So I went on looking. I went to watch the new Top Gun film, and I was amazed at that Ryan Tedder song that was on there. I'm Not Worried About It, or whatever it's called. And I knew just from seeing trailers on YouTube and stuff that he was doing a songwriting course. So I signed up to it, and I followed along and wrote the 3 songs. And I wasn't doing that to like network or to climb my way up the ladder. I was just doing it to get better at the craft. And then they got in touch because they'd obviously heard those songs that I did for that course. And they said, oh, hey, we're looking to ask some of the people who've been part of things with studio to teach something. And if I hadn't had that fundamental thing of I just need to get better at this, then I wouldn't have done that studio course. I wouldn't be on this call. Like, I'm not on this call with you now, for example, because I networked my way onto it and just called you out of the blue. I listen to you because I want to get better at being a creative person. And through that love of listening to your thing and me, when receiving certain emails from you and thinking, oh yeah, that thing that the poet David White has said, Rich would really like that. And just in sending you help, not, again, it goes back to that training thing. I imagine you do get emails from people, and it is a bit like that thing, like your train is going and they're just standing on the platform going, Rich, can you listen to this, or can you do this for me, or can you do that for me? And everyone's got have your train going. What's just interesting, it's much funner, it's much more fun for all of us if we're just sharing our love of the craft. So yeah, it's a long answer, but I guess to answer it, like, how can the song goes up and you're like watching the numbers, you're looking at the statistics, it's already too late then. Like, you don't want to worry about that moment. It's more about how you've engaged with the love of the craft and how you've shared what you've learned with other people. Where if you're truly pursuing it and truly trying to get really good at what you enjoy doing, then life has a way of going, have you tried this course, or why don't you reply to that email and send that person that thing that you think they'd like? Or why don't you hear these, like you always say, Rich, a quiet whisper, you get this excitement. It's like the leechy side of the music industry of trying to get one up and trying to get other people to help you when you haven't helped them, is coming from not a negative place, but not a super positive place. But if you're coming from the place of love of the craft, then that's gonna, I guess, like the songwriting gods or the trailer music gods, whatever field you're in, they like it, and they'll send you ideas of like where to send things, what if there's a blog that, yeah, I guess I don't want to ramble too much, but if hopefully what I've said makes a bit of sense. I don't know.
Dude, it makes perfect sense. Plus, I love a good analogy, so I like the whole train thing.
Yeah.
I'm reading Amanda Palmer's book. Oh, I forgot what it's called now. The Art of Asking. Yeah, at the moment, and she talks about creative people collecting dots and then connecting them.
Yeah.
And what you're doing when you said about how we got in touch was you had these 2 dots, this poet's newsletter and the newsletter I was sending, and you were like, oh, I think Rich would like this. You connected the 2 dots. And then because the doors are open for you, being open to the universe and your mind and your creativity, you're here on the podcast because you connected those dots. I think that's a really valuable piece of advice.
Yeah. And the lovely thing about is collecting dots is full of your power. If you love the craft and you're excited to go out into the world and find more about it, then you can collect so many dots and no one can stop you doing that. And then it's connecting is another thing. But I love that. Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying about figures and why I like, particularly with Banfi, I really enjoy. Banfi did used to be a thing where there were other people involved, but it's evolved to gone back to the thing where it's just me, because I love, a bit like how a novelist can just, nothing can get in their way. If they've got the idea and they want to put it down on paper, then from that kind of like singular vision thing, There's something about that. I think it's great that people collaborate, and I love collaboration. I love working with Tom with prayers, but I also really like looking at a painting in a gallery and just thinking, yeah, that's from one mind, that's from one person, or the same with a novel or poetry. And I really like how music is getting like that now as well. And I guess it goes back to that kind of the collecting the dots thing. If you're working on your own, you can just go as deep as you want, and you can play guitar, you can learn to program drums, you can it's awesome, isn't it? That like technology now and how much can come from a singular person, I think is amazing in some ways.
Yes, it is. I think also the other thing is we have so many tools at our disposal to communicate everything we are feeling internally.
Yeah,
You know, when you say we're collecting and connecting these dots and they're being processed inside in the forms of pictures and sounds and emotions, and then we can go, I've got a full orchestra at the fingertips. I've got a great drum kit, guitars, mandolin. I've got every single instrument in the universe. Go.
yeah, it's
And then I
great.
was like, which one do I choose? Oh, these samples aren't as good. Then there's a whole kettle of fish going on there. But yeah, I think it's amazing that we have all that. But I think actually what you say about as an artist being able to just communicate freely without having to think about necessarily a publisher or an editor or a co-writer or bandmates, being able just to go, I'm just going to do me and let myself grow in that way.
Yeah,
And that's exactly why I have other pseudonyms outside of trailer music, so that I can just be like, I'm not writing to a brief. I'm not writing to producers and publishers' feedback. I'm just doing this because I love it. Whether it sounds
yeah,
rubbish, I'll get better. you know?
yeah. And it is, you just got to pursue what you say quite often, you just have to pursue what excites you. And that, I reckon there's countless examples. If someone's listening and thinking, yeah, it's all well and good, but I just released an album and it's got 5 listens, and they're just just absolutely gutted. Car Seat Headrest, who is now extremely successful, I think he put out like 10 albums, granted in like very quick succession, but he just churned them out, and no one listened to any of it. And then he gradually found his place. Or with writers like James Lee Burke, who does the Dave. Have you read the Dave Robichaux novels?
Nope.
Oh, they're
I've
like
just written.
detective. They're awesome, like detective novels, which got great storylines. The Jack Reacher sort of thing,
Now you're
but
talking.
also, sorry,
Now you're talking.
yeah. Honestly, if you like Jack Reacher, you'll love James Lee Burke. He writes these awesome detective novels that are like Reacher, but there's also these moments of like really lovely writing. And this is classic. Anyone listening to this will think of someone where I think J.K. Rowling. Like, how many times did she get, just rejected? But James Lee Burke has kept all 16 rejection slips that he got for over the years before he got in. So it really is. I think I'm still trying to answer that question of how do you start getting songs to make money? There's no quick way. It's more the kind of do what you love, and then the music gods will see if you deserve to have little nuggets that you can then grab and go, oh, I might, reach out to that person, or I might do that thing. And then this is why everyone has a different path to whatever success they have, is because it should remain a mystery. There shouldn't be a blueprint. Otherwise someone could sell it and spoil it all.
The thing is, you may not think it, but you have answered the question very eloquently. You've essentially laid out a load of dots that everyone needs to connect. And the connection is keep doing it because you love it.
Yeah.
And share what you're doing with people you think would benefit from sharing it. I'm not just talking about like working on a great track again today. Tweet. working on another great track today. Tweet. You know, I'm not talking about that type of sharing. I'm talking about like you did with me, where you reached out and were like, I think you'd like this because of what you wrote in my newsletter. And because you wrote that, I went, oh, I'll give this a read. He's read my newsletter, obviously, because of what you said. And I read it. I was like, this is awesome. I'm going to reply.
Awesome.
You know, rather than, hey, Rich, you're great. Can you listen to my track? I can.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've got other stuff to do as well, you know. So,
yeah. Those dots just aren't, because to carry on that analogy, they got to feel close to connect them. And by being genuine about it and genuinely trying to get better at whatever your craft is, the dots that need to be connected, they'll assimilate and move and look for each other, won't they? Move together and want to be connected. I want to say as well, like I've often wondered, like, why do I want to get better at making music? And that sounds like a stupid question, but sometimes it is so painful, isn't it? When to say to yourself, I'm not as good as I could be, and to then try and get better. So I've often wondered, like, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to get better? And I was listening to Alan Watts talk about this, and he's like much more eloquent, but it's essentially like, if you imagine two people playing bat and ball on the beach, that most likely the game they're playing is, can we beat our record? Like, we just hit a rally of 20, can we hit more than that? And if you ask why are they doing that, why are they trying to get better at bat and ball, it's just because it's fun. Like, there's no instrumental reason, it's just intrinsically good to get better at stuff. And I think as we get older, we think, oh no, the reason to get better is, the reason to win a gold at the Olympics is because then everyone thinks you're awesome, and you get sponsorship deals, and you get all this career stuff. But it isn't. The reason to win gold at the Olympics is because it's awesome to find what you're good at and then try and get better at it for no reason other than it's fun. Like, it's fun to just see if you can beat the record at bat and ball. And that really helps me, because on days where I'm struggling or I haven't had the reception that I've wanted, then just remembering nothing outside of the craft and the fun of getting better at it actually really matters. And if I do just keep pursuing those two things, then I'm taking care of everything.
Yeah, I think it comes down to those the two things that keep coming up. Sorry, if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm typing what you're saying. So not Tyler.
Cool.
I'm not like doing the entire thing. What are they called again? The clerks in courtrooms.
Oh yeah, I don't know what you call them, but they know shorthand, don't they? It's the whole language.
It's, if you look at the manuscript, it's gibberish. No, I'm just writing down, do it because it's fun and do your thing well.
Yeah.
And because it's fun, you will do it well because you will keep trying.
Yeah.
So it's like this upwards trend of cycles, you know. I didn't do so well today, but I enjoyed it. So let's keep going. And the thing I really liked is that you said about, you know, obviously you write songs and you're doing very well at it, but you were like, I'm going to do this guy's course on songwriting.
Yeah.
You know, and because of that, Studio then reached out, and now you've got your course on songwriting, and yeah, it's great. And that is another thing I think is in your explanation, which is open to those little thoughts where you go, oh, maybe I'll just try this.
Yeah.
You know, there's somebody whispering to you going, Joe, do the course. And you're like, shh.
Yeah.
I know everything there is about songwriting already. Thank you very much. But yeah, it's a really funny thing. And I really like it. Although as a listener and a viewer of podcasts and shows where they say, oh, it's just about doing well and working hard, I go, oh, damn it.
Yeah.
That there with my pen and paper. Come on. Where's the blueprint? But the blueprint it's more of a kind of blurry print, really, is those things, which is, if you do your thing and you do it because you enjoy it and you bring other people into the fold in a natural way, you will start to see things. And this is what I've absolutely loved about the newsletter. That I started the newsletter because I was like, I've been the little voice has been telling me to do this for years. I just never found the time to do it, or at least I avoided it because I was terrified. And then I started doing it, and actually it's been really wonderful for me because I get to meet people like you, and I get to know my audience a bit better, and it makes you realize how those things that we do every day that we don't think are feeding our creativity, like for instance, watching zombies being shot on a video game, you don't think this is feeding my creativity. But then when you assimilate it into this newsletter format, you go, oh, actually, I wrote some great horror music that day. You know,
Really
there's
awesome.
these wonderful connections, and it's just, yeah, it's great. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's such a cool way of keeping a journal in a public way. Like you say, it puts things into focus, and it's like, oh gosh, yeah, look. And I imagine maybe I don't do it. I think I should start, but I bet you maybe see something you've talked about 2 months ago, and in real life you'd have I never remember that thing then has an influence on music you're making now.
Yeah.
But because you've put it out there, you can look back and you can see, oh wow, look at those dots, like
Yeah.
finding their way towards each other, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, the nice thing is, I never saw myself as a reader, but I'm looking back at this going, hey, I've read 4 books. Amazing.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah,
It's a really valuable thing. Okay, we're going to take this wonderful gift that you've given in this kind of idea of just doing it because you love it and working on your craft, which is actually really important. Actually, and there's another really great podcast called. I've forgotten her name. Okay, I'm gonna have to look it up. Emily White is the host. Emily White, music marketing.
Emily White.
Here we go. That's why I can remember. It's massive. The name of the podcast is How to Build a Sustainable Music Career and Collect All Revenue Streams. It's a really cool podcast because she walks you through the entire steps of essentially trying to make it as an artist yourself.
Yeah.
And the first episode is based on her book. The first episode is working on your craft, getting your art together. And then the rest of it is more kind of formality, uploading at the right time, making you've got 6 weeks before you do this, then you send out this. And it's a lot of the rest of the podcast is very mechanical, approaching the playlisting places at this point after you've released a single. But in all of her interviews, it all comes back down to the core of it, which is what you've been talking about, which is just do the amazing stuff you feel you should be doing and just keep working on it.
Yeah.
Because we can all figure out how to upload a track to Spotify.
That's the thing. In terms of practicalities, anything that I could offer would be things like, never come across as needy, never contact someone unless you feel like you're trained, like you've got some kind of train going. When you do contact people, maybe like you send them your songs, and then if you don't hear anything, rather than carrying on contacting more people, just go back to the studio, go back to the cave, like just work on the craft for maybe another year and then try again. Maybe go away, make another album, and then come back. And I say this like I've mastered it. I haven't. Like I said, when I made that Banfi album that I was very proud of, when it didn't do well commercially, psychologically, for me to go, that's okay, I'm just going to carry on doing the craft that I love. It wasn't like this. It was very difficult. I struggled a lot, but I managed to eventually have enough space from it where I then did a song that it's called Still Running, is the latest one, the latest Banfi song I released. And it got on another list, which is like the main Spotify, so that kind of genre of indie alternative, like Arcade Fire and Alt J and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It got on there, and it got on this gentle playlist alongside like the 1975 and Phoebe Bridges. And again, I don't want to quantify myself against Spotify playlists. That's not the goal at all. But at the same time, parts of my brain are that shallow, and it really is like, oh great, getting on that playlist, what a pat on the back. And it shouldn't be the reason to do it. I guess I'm just saying this because I don't want to come across as I've mastered this side of, oh, I just do it because I love it and I never let any of this other stuff worry me. Like, it really does. It's more of, yeah, I'm still learning about this stuff as much as anyone else.
Yeah.
Um,
But that,
yeah.
it takes humility to admit that, because we're all still learning. Yeah, I don't know anyone who's reached a level of success where they're not battling their inner critic, or where they're not chasing the next hit. You know, as a trailer music composer, and you release an album that doesn't land a placement, you're not going to be like, that's okay. You're going to go, damn it, what did I do wrong? Where, you know, what's the problem? Did I do something terrible? You know, there will be questions, but the thing to fall back on there is, because you do it because you enjoy it, it makes it easier to pick yourself back up when that stuff happens.
Yeah.
You know, when I used to do live stuff, playing as doing session work, I did not enjoy it. I hated it. So when it went badly, I couldn't pick myself up. I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. This is awful. You know,
Oh, what? So you would play what,
as a
guitar?
guitarist, yeah, guitarist.
Oh, for other artists on
Yeah,
stage.
yeah. It's like small. Very. It was nothing massive, but at the time it paid the bills, or at least some of the bills, and it was just, yeah, I did not enjoy it.
I've had a very love-hate relationship with live performing. Once I'm on stage and it's all happening, I think I do genuinely love it. But carrying guitar amps around London to rehearsal studios and not getting a sound check, or not having your own engineer when you're opening for someone else, and the venue's engineer being a bit mean, and maybe when I played in Europe, it's awesome. Like Germany, Austria, Italy, they treat you incredibly, and then you get back to you get back to UK, you're in Scotland, and they'll be like, "Here's your crate of Fosters now, you know, go sit in the cupboard until you come on stage," and it's horrible. So yeah, I struggle with. I think I would like to play live again, and Tom and I are starting to think how we're going to do prayers live. Banfi, they're very much songs that should be shared by people and danced to, and I want to do it live again, but it's difficult. This is one of the benefits of having a label. When I was with Communion, they would, as part of the record deal, they give you a tour support, so that where they literally in the contract they say, here's X thousands of pounds that are just going to be dedicated to enabling you to go on tour and pay for like rehearsals, and that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, that is an entirely separate conversation, isn't it? You know, it's like,
Yeah.
taking your stuff on the road, which I've never done, because I've always been what you would call a bedroom producer, and proudly,
Yeah.
because I like my early nights, like waking up with the kids and having a coffee. We're gonna have to bring this to a close. So, my question to you is: if someone's listening to this and they've got this kind of burning desire to write their own songs, what would be your advice to them?
I would say do this thing that I call the Magpie Method,
Ooh.
which will get you way better at, which will, if as long as I'll say, are you sure, like, how do you know you want to write songs, and maybe like figure out whether they really do. But if they do, and I guess if they say, yeah, it draws, that they would just know. And then but anyway, the Magpie Method is this thing of, and it's nothing special. I'm saying it like I've invented it. I'm not at all. It's just how anyone makes music. But I think it helps to just say it explicitly. Is there's that distinction between, my dad always talked about how the reason the Beatles got so good is because when they used to play in Germany and they would play for hours every day, and they were playing probably mostly other people's songs. So if you think Paul and John learning so many songs of other people in order to do that, why is it then that there's all these wedding bands that are very busy and they obviously have learned like hundreds and hundreds of songs? Why aren't the people in those wedding bands amazing at creating their own songs? And it's because the reason I call it like a magpie thing is the magpie goes out and gets their little trinkets and treasures, and that's the equivalent of learning a guitar riff or learning like how that harmony works in that piece of music, analyzing the music. But if you don't bring it back to your nest, like the magpie brings everything back, it's like that second phase. I would just say to someone, you really want to get that, make sure you're bringing stuff back to the nest. I remember when I say this in the studio course I just did as well. It's like when I was younger, very much remember learning Scar Tissue by John Frusciante, learning it on the tab. And I loved playing it, but I never went, oh, that's a 1 chord and that's a 4 chord, and he's just playing the root and the third on the top. Like, it's not just music theory. Sometimes it's like chord shapes or things that you can steal from other songs. But yeah, it really is about not stealing, but you want to be, when you listen to your favorite stuff and you learn it, you need to be thinking, you need to bring it back to your nest and pull it apart and go, what is it? What is the chord progression in Scar Tissue? And what is the harmony there? And if you do that second bit, that's when you start making really good songs. And it applies to anything. It's the same with lyrics. Is don't just listen to someone whose lyrics you like and feel really jealous and be like, man, I could never do that. Write them down. Try. Yeah, there's a few methods you can do to figure out what they're doing. I think poetry helps a lot with lyric writing. You want to, a lot of stuff that lyricists do well, you can also see it in poetry, and maybe it's explained more by people like analyzing poetry. But it's this thing of not just knowing what you like and exposing yourself to it, but you got to bring it back to the nest and almost pull it apart and offer it to the point where you don't even Scar Tissue anymore, where you're so sick of it because you've listened to it too many times, you've ruined it by dissecting it to within an inch of its life, kind of thing.
Let's be
So
honest.
that's what I would say.
You can't ruin Scar Tissue. That's a beautiful song.
Yeah. It's indestructible.
Yeah.
But I would say that to anyone who's thinking I really want to write songs. I would say you've got to get good at that second part of that stealing thing. Don't just you learn what you like. I'll just say quickly, like I think it was Keith Richards with the Rolling Stones. Someone said to him once, "Do you ever get writer's block?" And he said, "No, I don't ever sit down to write. I just sit down and play like other people, like other songs that I know, and then before, like through the mystery, through the magic, just the fact that he's picked up his guitar, the song gods like that, and they will make him make some kind of mistake or some kind of cool thing, or make him think of a song that someone who was opening for the Stones the week before, a cool strumming pattern that they did. His subconscious will throw something in, and that's how it works. But that the subconscious can't do that if you're not doing this magpie thing of not just gathering stuff, but also figuring out how you can break it down, like the opposite of like Frankenstein, because then you can do your own Frankenstein. If you've ripped off, if you know a cool strumming pattern from one song and some chord shapes or some harmony from another thing and some lyrics from some other thing, then that's when you start like Frankensteining things together. And a lot of it is music theory, but it's also, I think it is broader than that. Like I had a music teacher who was amazing at music theory, and he played some of his own songs and they sounded terrible, like they were terrible. So it's not like music theory can't get you all the way by no means.
No, the application of music theory is another thing altogether, as opposed to understanding it. Because there's the critical side of it and there's the expressive side of it, knowing that, oh, this ending my track on a 6th chord works because this, rather than just ending on a 6th chord because it feels right, but knowing that it's a 6th chord, But no, I love that. I love the Keith Richards quote too, because explains why so many of my guitar riffs sound like "Tie Your Mother Down" by Queen.
No, nice.
Joe, this has been really cool to get to know you and to chat with you about creativity and writing music and your progress as an artist. So thank you for taking the time. It's been great.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks. And yeah, I just wanted to say, please keep, well, I'm sure you will, but I just love the podcast so much. And yeah, I hope you keep doing it. I hope you keep doing the newsletter, because it's nice to, I don't want to sound like I don't like Americans, because I very much do. But a lot of the time, a lot of podcasts and a lot of newsletters are written by people who I relate to what they love, but I can't relate to them as people. And so when I found your podcast, and it's like, oh, this is just this rich guy. He's got the same sense of humor as me and sees things in the same way. It was such a relief to think, oh, great, this.
Yeah,
It's hard to articulate what I mean, but I just love what you do, and I hope you keep doing it.
thank you. Thank you. I think what you're saying is, Rich, don't ever move to a sunny, beachy place and do your podcast on the beach.
Stay in the rain.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, it's raining again. I'll do a podcast. Oh, dude. Oh, no, that's really kind of you. Thank you. And yeah, I really enjoy what I do, which, as you've already said, is what keeps you going.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, dude.
Thanks, Rich.